I hid my hunger, sold my comfort, and saved like it was my only hope, just to buy her dream gift. But when I offered it, she cruelly laughed, saying another man had already given her far better. I need to get this out. I need someone to know what I did and how badly I destroyed everything good in my. Maybe if I write this down, maybe if strangers on the internet judge me the way I deserve, I'll finally understand the weight of what I owe. Her name was Sarah. We'd been together for 4 years, engaged for 8 months. She worked as a kindergarten teacher, came home exhausted but always smiled when she saw me. Always asked about my day first, even when hers was obviously harder. She'd fall asleep on my chest watching Netflix, and I'd think about how lucky I was. But here's the thing about being lucky, sometimes I get to appreciate it until it's gone. The ring obsession started innocently enough. Sarah would pause at jewelry store windows, not hint dropping, just admiring. She'd screenshot engagement rings from Instagram, saving them in a folder she didn't think I knew about. When her sister got engaged with this stunning vintage sapphire ring, Sarah's eyes lit in a way I'd never seen before. That's when I knew. That's when I decided to do something that would change our entire relationship forever. I started researching. Vintage sapphire engagement rings weren't just expensive, they were generational wealth expensive. The kind her sister's ring was, $12,000. Minimum. For something that would make Sarah's dreams come true. I made $3,200 a month at the auto shop. After rent, car payment, groceries, utilities, I had maybe $300 left over on a good month. The math was brutal. At my savings rate, it would take 3 years to afford that ring. 3 years of Sarah watching her friends get engaged. 3 years of her wondering why I wasn't ready to take that step. So I got creative. And by creative, I mean I got desperate. First, I moved out of our shared apartment. Told Sarah I wanted to save money, that we should live separately for a while before marriage. She cried. Actually cried, thinking I was getting cold feet about the engagement. I let her think that because explaining the truth felt too vulnerable. Too much like admitting I wasn't man enough to provide for her the way she deserved. I found a studio apartment above a Chinese restaurant. $400 a month, roaches included. The smell of grease soaked into everything I owned. My clothes, my pillow, my skin. I showered twice a day and still smelled like fried rice. Next, I sold my car. My beautiful 2019 Honda Civic that I'd worked overtime for 2 years to pay off. Told Sarah it was having transmission problems and wasn't worth fixing. Started taking 3 buses to get to work, leaving home at 5:30 a.m. for a job that started at 8. The bus route took me through the worst parts of the city, but it gave me an extra $200 a month in my ring fund. Then I got extreme with food. Breakfast was a single banana, lunch was a pack of crackers from the vending machine. Dinner was ramen noodles or rice with soy sauce if I was feeling fancy. I lost 35 pounds in 4 months. People at work asked if I was sick. Sarah asked if I was taken care of. I lied to everyone. The hunger was constant, not just physical hunger, though that was brutal. There was this deeper hunger, this desperation to prove worthy of her. Every skipped meal was an investment in our future. Every night shivering in my apartment, because I could afford to run the heat, was just temporary sacrifice for permanent happiness. I picked a weekend job at a gas station. Worked 60 hours a week total. Came home so exhausted I'd fall asleep standing in the shower. Sarah noticed I was always tired when we hung out, always distracted. She asked if everything was okay between us at least twice a week. I kept lying. Month by month the ring fund grew. The 500 first, 200 to 800, 4 500. I found the perfect ring at an estate jewelry shop downtown, a 1920s sapphire surrounded by tiny diamonds, exactly like the one in Sarah's screenshot folder. The jeweler agreed to hold it for me for $700 and $800. I was so close, but the isolation was me. Living alone, working constantly, never being able to go out with friends because I couldn't afford a. Sarah and I went from seeing each other 5 times a week to maybe twice. Our conversations became shorter, more strained. She started mentioning how distant I seemed, how she felt like she was losing me. She was right. I was disappearing, one skipped meal at a time. The worst part was watching her worry about our relationship, while I was secretly planning the most romantic proposal of her. She'd text asking if we were okay, if I still loved her, if I was having second thoughts about marriage. I'd text back, everything's fine, while eating my 3rd pack of crackers that day, sitting in my roach-infested studio, calculating how many more weeks until I could afford her dream ring. 7 months of this. 7 months of hunger, exhaustion, isolation and lies. 7 months of Sarah slowly pulling away because she thought I was pulling away from her. 7 months of destroying our relationship in order to save it. Finally, I had enough money. $700 to $800 plus tax, plus money for the proposal dinner I'd been planning. I bought the ring on a Tuesday, my hands shaking as I handed over the cash I'd literally bled for. The jeweler smiled and said Sarah was a lucky woman. I believed him. I planned everything perfectly. Made reservations at the Italian restaurant where we had our first date. Told Sarah I had something important to discuss, that I'd missed her and wanted to reconnect. She seemed nervous but excited, probably thinking I was either going to propose or break with her. The night of the proposal, I wore my best shirt, which hung loose from all the weight I'd lost. I picked her in an Uber because I still couldn't afford a car. She looked beautiful, but there was something different in her eyes. Something distant that hadn't been there when we first got engaged. During dinner, I could barely eat. Not because I was nervous about the proposal, but because months of near starvation had shrunk my stomach. I kept trying to make conversation, kept trying to recapture that easy connection we used to have. But we'd been apart too long, kept too many secrets from each other. After the main course, I got down on one knee right there in the restaurant, pulled out the ring box with trembling hands, opened it to reveal the sapphire ring that had cost me everything. "Sarah," I said, my voice breaking with exhaustion and hope and desperation. "I know things have been weird between us lately, but I love more than anything in this world. I've been working toward this moment for months. Will marry me?" The entire restaurant went quiet. Other diners turned to watch. The waiters stopped serving to see her reaction. Sarah looked at the ring. Then she looked at me. Then she started laughing. Not happy laughing. Not surprised laughing. Cold, bitter laughing that threw me like glass. "Are serious right now?" she said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "Disappear from my for 7 months, barely text me back, move out of our apartment, and now think can just buy way back in with some ring." I tried to explain, tried to tell her about the sacrifice, about how everything I'd done was for her. But she held her hand to stop me. "Jake," she said, and her voice was so tired, so done with me, "I don't know who think I am, but I'm not the kind of woman who can be bought with jewelry. Especially not when it comes from someone who's been treating me like garbage for half a year." The restaurant was dead silent now. Everyone staring. My face burning with shame. Then she said the words that ended everything. "Besides, David already proposed to me last month, with his grandmother's ring." And I said yes. David, her coworker. The other kindergarten teacher who'd started at her school in January. The one she'd mentioned in passing a few times, always positively. The one who'd been there while I was starving in a studio apartment, working for a ring she didn't even want anymore. "We were planning to tell this weekend," she continued, her engagement ring catching the restaurant light. A simple gold band with a small diamond. Nothing fancy, nothing expensive, nothing that required 7 months of hunger and isolation and lies. "Sarah, please," I whispered, still on one knee, still holding out the ring that had cost me everything. "Let me explain." She stood, gathered her purse, and looked down at me with something that might have been pity. "There's nothing to explain, Jake. Chose this ring over our relationship. Chose keeping secrets over talking to me. Chose some fantasy of who thought I was over actually knowing who I am." She walked toward the exit, then turned back one more time. "The woman we're trying to impress with that expensive ring. She never existed. The woman who actually loved. She's been trying to reach for 7 months, and never picked the phone. And then she was gone. Leaving me on one knee in a silent restaurant, holding a ring that had cost me my health, my home, my relationship, and my dignity." I sat back down at our table, closed the ring box, and ordered another glass of with money I couldn't afford to spend. The other diners slowly returned to their conversations, but I could feel them glancing over, probably wondering how someone could mess a proposal so completely. The worst part wasn't the public humiliation, though that burned like acid. The worst part wasn't losing Sarah to someone else, though that felt like dying. The worst part was realizing that everything I'd sacrificed, my comfort, my health, my relationship with the woman I loved, had all been for a version of Sarah that only existed in my head. I'd been so focused on giving her what I thought she wanted that I'd forgotten to give her what she actually needed: my presence, my attention, my honesty. That night, I went back to my studio apartment above the Chinese restaurant, sat on my mattress on the floor, and opened the ring box one more time. The sapphire caught the light from the neon sign outside my window, beautiful and perfect and completely. I'd saved like it was my only hope, sold my comfort, hidden my hunger, all for a dream that was never real. And now I'm sitting here, typing this at 3 a.m., sharing my stupidity with strangers on the internet, because I have no one left to talk to. When sacrifice everything for someone, Make sure not sacrificing the very things that made them love in the first place. Guys asked for an update. I had better news. I could tell I learned my lesson and moved on with dignity. Instead, I'm here to tell about the 2 weeks that followed the restaurant disaster. And how I managed to make everything infinitely worse. The morning after the proposal, I woke on my mattress thinking maybe it had all been nightmare. Then I saw the ring box on my windowsill, catching the gray morning light, and reality hit me like a truck. My first thought wasn't sadness. It wasn't acceptance. It was anger. How dare she embarrass me like that in public? How dare she not even listen to my explanation? How dare she choose David, boring, safe David, over someone who'd literally starved himself to give her everything she wanted? I convinced that if she just understood the sacrifice, if she just knew what I'd given for her, she'd realize her mistake, that the proposal had just caught her off guard, that she was probably confused and needed time to process. So I did what any rational person would do. I started a campaign to win her back. It started with texts. Long, detailed messages explaining everything, how I'd moved to the studio apartment to save money for her ring. How I'd sold my car, skipped meals, worked 2 jobs. How every decision I'd made was motivated by love for her. She didn't respond to the first text. Or the second. By the 5th text that morning, she sent back a single message. Jake, please stop. I'm with David now. I need to respect that. Respect that. Respect that she'd thrown away 4 years together for some guy she'd known for 8 months. Respect that she'd humiliated me in front of an entire restaurant without even listening to my side. I kept texting. By noon, she'd blocked my number. So I made a Facebook account. I deleted mine months ago to avoid the temptation of spending money on social events. But desperation makes creative. I found her profile and started messaging her there. The messages got longer, more desperate. I wrote entire essays about our relationship, about the ring, about how David could never love her the way I did. I posted on her wall, tagged her in posts about second chances and true love. She blocked me on Facebook within hours. Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, LinkedIn, for crying out loud, every platform I could think of. Each time she blocked me, I felt more vindicated. If she wasn't feeling guilty, why would she need to block me everywhere? The truth is, I was harassing her. But at the time, I called it fighting for love. When social media failed, I got creative. I started showing places I knew she'd be. Her school, her favorite coffee shop, the gym where she took yoga classes. I never approached her directly. I'd just be there. Hoping she'd see me and remember what we had. Hoping she'd realize that David couldn't possibly know her favorite order at Starbucks. Or that she always got anxious before parent-teacher conferences. Or that she cried during every Pixar movie. After 3 days of this, her sister Emma called me. Jake, what the is wrong with? Emma had always liked me. We'd gotten along great during family dinners, holiday parties. She'd been excited about Sarah and me getting engaged. Hearing the disappointment in her voice was almost worse than losing Sarah. I just need to talk to her, I said. If she'd just listened to me for 5 minutes. She listened for 4 years, Jake. 4 years of being a great boyfriend. And then disappeared for 7 months and expected her to wait around, while played some weird game she didn't even know about. It wasn't a game. I was trying to. I know what we're trying to do. Sarah told me about the ring. About the sacrifice. Jake, it's sweet that wanted to give her something special, but broke with her to do it. I didn't break with her. Moved out. Stopped calling. Avoided her friends and family. Were physically present but emotionally absent for months. What would call that? I didn't have an answer. David asked her out 6 weeks ago. Emma continued. 6 weeks, Jake. She turned him down at first because she was still hoping to come back. Still hoping to explain what was going on, but never did. My stomach dropped. She turned him down. 3 times. She kept telling him she was in a relationship, even though we're treating her like a stranger. It wasn't until 2 weeks ago that she finally accepted that we're done with her. 2 weeks ago, while I was picking out the ring, Sarah was finally giving on us. Emma, please. I need to explain. No, Jake, need to stop. The school is considering a restraining order. Or scaring her. The woman I'd spent 4 years loving, protecting, caring for. The woman I'd sacrificed everything to make happy. I was scaring her. I would never. Sarah already did her. Every day for 7 months. And now making it worse. She hung. That night, I sat in my studio apartment, staring at the ring, and for the first time since the proposal, I cried. Not angry tears. Not frustrated tears. The deep, gut-wrenching sobs of someone finally facing reality. But even then, I wasn't done making mistakes. The next morning, I drove my boss's pickup truck to David's apartment complex. I'd found his address online, told I just wanted to talk to him man to man. Explain the situation. Make him understand that he was getting in the middle of something complicated. David lived in a nice complex with a pool and assigned parking. The kind of place I could have afforded if I hadn't been saving every penny for 7 months. His car was a newer Toyota, clean and reliable. Everything about his seemed stable, comfortable, normal. Everything I'd given to buy a ring. I waited in the parking lot for 3 hours before he came home from work. When he got out of his car, I got out of the truck. David. He looked, saw me walking toward him. I could see the recognition in his eyes, followed immediately by worriness. Jake. Yeah, I need to talk to about Sarah. He glanced around the parking lot, probably calculating how quickly he could get to his front door. There's nothing to talk about, man. Sarah and I are together now. Don't understand the situation. I understand perfectly. Had 4 years with an amazing woman and blew it. Now are stalking her because can't accept that she's moved on. Stalking. The word hit me like a. I'm not stalking anyone, I'm trying to fix a misunderstanding. The misunderstanding where abandoned girlfriend for 7 months, and then expected her to be grateful when finally showed back. He knew everything. Sarah had told him everything. I was saving for a ring. I know. She told me, know what else she told me? That she would have said yes to a ring pop if proposed last year instead of disappearing. A ring pop. 25 cents at the gas station. She loved Jake. Past tense. She grieved relationship for months while we're off playing some martyr complex. By the time decided to come back she was done grieving. And we're just waiting in the wings to swoop in. No man. I was being her friend. I was listening when she cried about feeling abandoned. I was there when she wondered if she wasn't worth fighting for. I was present. Present. The one thing I hadn't been. Look. David continued, his voice softening slightly. I'm sorry hurting. I really am. But what did to her? She's still recovering from that. She doesn't need showing at her work, messaging her family, making her afraid to leave her apartment. I would never. Or here at my apartment complex, Jake. Found out where I live and came here to confront me. How is that not? He was right. Standing there in that parking lot, finally seeing through someone else's eyes, I understood how far I'd fallen. I wasn't fighting for love. I wasn't being romantic or persistent. I was being the kind of man women cross the street to avoid. I'm gonna go inside now, David said, backing toward his building. Show here again, or at Sarah's school, or anywhere else, I'm calling the police. This needs to stop. I watched him disappear into his building, then sat in the truck for another hour, trying to figure out how I'd become this person. How I'd gone from being someone Sarah loved to someone she feared. The drive back to my studio apartment felt like the longest journey of my. Every mile was a reminder that I was heading back to nothing. No girlfriend, no friends, no family who'd take my calls after Emma spread the word about my behavior. Just me, a mattress on the floor, the smell of fried rice, and a 7,800 ring that nobody wanted. But the absolute worst part, the detail that keeps me awake at 3 a.m. writing these posts, was something David said that I can't stop thinking about. She would have said yes to a ring pop if proposed last year. I'd destroyed everything good in my chasing a fantasy, when reality was sitting right in front of me, waiting for me to just show and be present. Instead, I chose to disappear. And by the time I came back, she'd learned to live without me. The woman who would have married me for a 25-cent candy ring was gone, replaced by someone who needed police protection from the stranger I'd become. This is it. The end of my story. 3 months have passed since David told me to stay away, and I need to tell what happens when lose everything and keep making it worse. After that confrontation in the parking lot, I promised I'd leave Sarah alone. I'd respect her decision. I'd move on with whatever dignity I had left. I lasted 4 days. On day 5, I was walking past the elementary school where she taught, telling I was just taking a new route to the bus stop. I wasn't planning to go in. Wasn't planning to cause problems. But through the chain link fence, I could see her playground duty, watching kids on swings, smiling at something a little girl was telling her. She looked happy. Peaceful. Like she'd never been with me those last few months when I was disappearing bit by bit. Before I knew what I was doing, I was at the school's front entrance, asking the secretary if I could speak with Ms. Sarah about something important. Heir apparent, she asked. I should have left right then. Should have mumbled an excuse and walked away. Instead, I said I was her fiancé and needed to discuss something urgent. The secretary called Sarah's classroom. 2 minutes later, Sarah appeared in the main office, saw me and went completely white. Jake, what are you doing here? I just need 5 minutes, please. Just let me explain about the ring, about everything. Security. Sarah said to the secretary, her voice shaking. Call security. Sarah, please, don't make this bigger than. But she was already backing away from me, and I could see genuine fear in her eyes. Fear of me. The man who used to hold her when she had nightmares was now giving her new ones. Security was a retired cop named Frank who looked like he could break me in half. He escorted me off school property and told me if I came back, he'd arrest me for trespassing. That afternoon, Sarah filed for a restraining order. I found out when a sheriff's deputy knocked on my studio apartment door the next morning, serving me papers that made it official. I was legally forbidden from coming within 500 feet of the woman I'd planned to marry. Reading those papers, seeing Sarah's statement about how my behavior made her afraid to leave her apartment, how she'd changed her route to work because of me, how she was considering transferring schools just to feel safe. That's when I finally understood what I'd become. But understanding and changing are two different things. I the restraining order 3 times in the first week. Not intentionally. Or at least, that's what I told. I'd forget and take the bus route that went past her apartment. I'd go to our old coffee shop and she'd walk in while I was there. Each time, she'd see me and immediately leave. Probably to call the police. On the 3rd, they arrested me. Spending a night in jail gives a lot of time to think. The holding cell smelled like disinfectant and desperation, and I was surrounded by people who'd made their own series of catastrophic decisions. A driver who'd killed someone. A guy who'd beaten his girlfriend. An addict who'd robbed a convenience store. And me, the guy who'd loved someone so badly that he'd terrorized her. My cellmate was a man named Carlos who was there for violating his own restraining order. When I told him my story, expecting sympathy or understanding, he just shook his head. Brother, don't love that woman, love the idea of owning her. That's not true. Everything I did was for her. Everything did was about feeling like a provider, like a man. Think sacrifice equals love. But love is asking someone what they actually want instead of deciding for them. I was trying to give her her dream ring. O's dream. Did she ever say she wanted to starve? Did she ever say she wanted to disappear from her? Or did decide that's what love looked like and force it on both of? I couldn't answer him. Real love, Carlos continued, would have been proposing with whatever ring could afford when we're happy together. Real love would have been talking to her when money got tight instead of her out. Turned love into a transaction, and now are mad she didn't want to complete the purchase. I got out after 18 hours, but the damage was done. My arrest made the local news because it was a slow day and local man arrested for stalking teacher. Was apparently worth a brief mention. My boss saw it. My coworkers saw it. My family saw it. Tony fired me the next day. Not just because of the arrest, but because I'd been distracted and unreliable for months. He'd been covering for me, thinking I was going through a rough patch, but seeing my name in the paper connected to stalking charges made him realize I was liability he couldn't afford. Jake, you're a good mechanic, he said as I cleaned out my toolbox. But are not a good man right now. Get head straight, then we'll talk. My parents drove down from Ohio that weekend. I hadn't seen them since Christmas, hadn't told them about the breakup or the proposal or the arrest. They found out everything from a Google search. The disappointment in my mother's eyes was worse than anything Sarah or David or the police had put me through. Jakey, she said, using the nickname she'd called me since childhood. What happened to? We're raised better than this. I tried to explain about the ring, about the sacrifice, about how Sarah had misunderstood my intentions. But hearing say it out loud to my parents, seeing their faces as I described moving out and disappearing and stalking her workplace, I finally heard how insane it all sounded. Son, my dad said quietly, need help. Professional help. This isn't just about a girl anymore. This is about not understanding how to be in the world. They offered to pay for therapy if I'd come back to Ohio with them. Start over in a place where nobody knew about the restraining order or the arrest. Find a new job. Get my together. Learn how to be alone before I tried to be with anyone else. I said no. I wasn't ready to give on Sarah. Wasn't ready to admit that our story was really over. They left without me, and I haven't heard from them since. The studio apartment became my entire world. Without a job, I couldn't afford to go anywhere. I lived on ramen and whatever was left in my savings account. I spent hours every day looking at Sarah's social media through accounts, watching her continue without me. She looked happy. Really happy. In a way I don't remember her looking during our last year together. She and David went to her school's fundraiser gala. They took weekend trips to the mountains. They adopted a rescue dog together. A golden retriever named Benny who appeared in dozens of photos, always making Sarah laugh. I realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd made her laugh like that. The worst part was seeing how her friends and family had embraced David. Sarah's mom, who'd always been polite but distant with me, was posting pictures of David helping with her garden. Emma, who'd once confided that she thought I was perfect for Sarah, was commenting heart emojis on David's posts. They weren't just together. They'd built a that looked exactly like the one I'd thrown away, except happier, healthier, more honest. 6 weeks after my arrest, I saw the engagement photos, not the proposal itself. David was smart enough to keep that private. But the professional engagement, they'd done at the botanical garden where Sarah and I had our second date. She was wearing a simple white dress, laughing at something off camera. David was looking at her like she was the only person in the world. The ring was visible in several shots. His grandmother's ring, the one she'd mentioned at the restaurant. A simple gold band with a small diamond. Probably worth $500. Maybe less. She'd never looked happier. That night, I took the sapphire ring out of its box for the first time in months. Held it to the light from the neon sign outside my window. It was still beautiful, still perfect, still exactly what I thought she'd wanted. But looking at those engagement photos, seeing her genuine joy with a 500 ring, instead of my 7,800 sacrifice, I finally understood what everyone had been trying to tell me. I'd never been buying her a ring. I'd been buying the feeling of being worthy of her love. And in the process, I'd forgotten that she'd already thought I was worthy. For 4 years, she'd loved me exactly as I was. Before the ring, before the sacrifice, before I decided that love needed to be earned through suffering. I'd had everything I thought I was working toward, and I'd thrown it away to chase a fantasy. The next morning, I took the ring to a pawn shop downtown. The guy offered me $3,200 for it. Less than half what I'd paid. I took the money anyway, because keeping it felt like holding on to a delusion. With that money, I bought a Greyhound ticket to Ohio. Called my parents from the bus station and asked if the therapy offer was still on the table. "Of course, honey," my mom said, crying a little. "Come home. I've been in Ohio for 6 weeks now. Staying in my childhood bedroom, seeing a therapist twice a week, working part-time at a garage owned by my dad's friend. Learning how to be a person again, instead of a collection of regrets and desperate gestures. The therapist says I have anxious attachment issues stemming from childhood trauma I'd never dealt with. Says my need to earn love through sacrifice comes from never feeling inherently worthy of it. Says the stalking behavior was about control, not love, because I couldn't accept that Sarah had agency in her own. All of that might be true. Probably is true. But the real truth is simpler. I thought love was about what I could give instead of who I could be. I thought sacrifice made me noble instead of just unavailable. I thought a 7,800 ring mattered more than 7,800 small moments of presence and attention and care. Sarah married David last month. I saw the wedding photos on Instagram before I deleted all my social media accounts. She looked radiant. Her sister Emma was the maid of honor. David's grandmother's ring caught the light as she the cake. I wasn't invited. Obviously. But even if I had been, even if somehow we'd stayed friends through all of this, I wouldn't have gone. Because seeing her that happy would have forced me to confront something I'm still not ready to face. She's better off without me. Not because David is better than me, but because the version of me she fell in love with died somewhere in that studio apartment, starving himself for a dream that was never real. I destroyed the best thing in my trying to prove I deserved it. And by the time I realized what I'd lost, I'd become someone who deserved to lose it. Some mistakes can't be fixed. Some doors, once closed, don't reopen. Some people, once have scared them, never stop being afraid of. I learned that love isn't a transaction where suffering gets rewarded with devotion. But I learned it too late, and now I'm just another cautionary tale about a man who confused possession with love, sacrifice with presence, and grand gestures with simple humanity. If you're reading this and recognize in my story, stop. Whatever planning, whatever think need to prove, whatever think love requires, stop. The person love doesn't need. They need Monday morning conversations and help with grocery bags and attention when they tell about their day. They need to show, not disappear. They need presence, not presence. And if already started disappearing, if already decided that love requires suffering in silence, if are already planning the grand gesture that will fix everything broken, stop. Call them. Apologize. Choose connection over perfection, presence over sacrifice, honest conversation over expensive solutions. Don't become me. Don't learn the difference between loving someone and loving the idea of deserving them, after it's too late to matter.